Good evening. Tonight, a musical surprise as the Beatles topple. Hear this.
It's cool, it's groovy, it's number one, the Led Zeppelin.
The what?
The Led Zeppelin, but I'm afraid that you and other dads like you, Bob, may never have heard of them. But this British group has made musical history today. Readers of the Melody Maker have voted them the top world group. The significance is that the Beatles have held this title for 8 years. But now, the Beatles are out. 8 years ago, the Beatles were 4 clean-cut and clean-shaven young men who had a happy knack for songwriting. The tunes they wrote and sang were evergreens, as hummable and as immortal as I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas and Autumn Leaves. But a new generation was growing up, a generation to whom Bing Crosby and the Ink Spots meant nothing, a generation that demanded a new kind of music, music like the music of the Led Zeppelin.
I think that the last year has seen a bit of a revolution in popular music and the death of the personality cult. Led Zeppelin have taken over where the Beatles left off because people are now interested in young musicians rather than in, say, what Paul McCartney had for breakfast. People have turned inwards and they're looking to the young musicians scene. Led Zeppelin are good musicians and people are voting for them rather than for an image as they used to years ago.
The Beatles ran for 8 years, and when one thinks of a song of theirs, Yesterday, which had all sorts of variations played upon it, do you think as musicians you'll be able to last as long as 8 years? Do you think you'll be inventive enough? You know, the old thing about being able to whistle a tune, being able to hum the tune as you go away, I don't think I could hum any of your stuff.
No, but I think it's changing. That's the main thing, you see. I think that's why the awards have changed, because the kids are changing for a start. And so is the music changing. I think, well, there's already a single out of Whole Lot of Love, an orchestra playing it, which is quite interesting, really. The flute plays what the lead vocal would do.
So you're saying that your fans don't necessarily want to whistle the tunes, to hum the tune, but they're much more sophisticated than, you know, my generation.
I think so. Well, not in that sense. I think these days that let's say the public, you know, it's not just say the kids, because we've had sort of all sorts of people at concerts, you know. I think that they're coming to listen to what you're playing and not just to look at you and see what you are. I mean, I remember when I was, let's go back a few years, when I first went to see the Beatles, because we've mentioned them a few times, it was to look at them, you know. It wasn't, you didn't really bother what you were listening to.
Yes.
And today, it's not what you are, it's what you're playing. And
well, this is interesting. We've heard that the personality cult is dead, but I'm still going to put one of those kind of questions. I mean, I wouldn't know whether you're a millionaire or not, but you must be quite rich now. What's it like having money?
Well, John's laughing because I think I must spend a good £5 a week, and I think goat and chicken food.
This is keeping your goats, yes,
right? Yeah.
In Kidderminster.
Yeah.
But having paid for the goat bill, you've got a little bit left over, have you?
Oh, a few shillings and groats and stuff.
Hey fellas, have you heard the news? You know that Annie's back in town. I want Led Zeppelin, like a growing number of bands, don't seem to rate or aim at the hit parade as such in their career. Is this true?
Well, not entirely, no. But not a singles chart, you know,
Right.
mainly the LP charts. Because I think if you have a hit single, then you have the trouble with the record companies saying, well, you've had one hit single, now you've got to have a follow-up, and for us it's hard enough, you know, to get the albums going, let alone singles as well.
And the general public, all of it, they seem to slate you if you get something together. What they don't seem to understand is that people like Bessie Smith, in the very early days, believe it or not, some of her records sold over 1 million, you know, and that was in like 1927, and she was really, everybody was going, oh, too much. And now people are saying she's too much because they think that she never sold more than about 10 records a time.
Right. Would you say Bessie Smith was, in those days, counted as, say, a minority taste?
I think just people went out and bought what they liked then.
Yeah,
You know,
probably
they weren't sort of ruled by somebody saying, well, it's far out, man. You know.
You need cooling, baby, I'm not fooling. I'm gonna send you back to schooling. Way down inside, honey, you need it. I'm gonna give you my love. I'm gonna give you my love. Oh, want a whole lot of love. 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 You've been learning, baby, I've been learning. All that good time, baby, I've been the dirt man. I'm way down inside, honey, you need I'm gonna give you my love. I'm gonna give you my love. Oh, a whole lot of love. Want a whole lot of love. Want a whole lot of love. Want a whole lot of love.
Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of my Led Zeppelin album deep dive. Sorry this one's been taking me so long, but I'm trying to put a little more effort into these, and I've just been really busy lately, so I'm sorry I'm not putting these out at the usual pace that I have been. But anyway, we're here to talk about Led Zeppelin's second album, Led Zeppelin II. This was released on October 22nd, 1969. It was recorded from April through August of 1969, and it went to #1 in the US and the UK. Their second album, and incredibly, it's still not my favorite Led Zeppelin album. As amazing, this album is a masterpiece. It's a flawless album. One of the best albums of 1969. Led Zeppelin's second album of 1969, although honestly, I think of the first Led Zeppelin album as kind of being from 1968 because that's when they recorded it. They released it in early January of 1969. So I kind of technically think of that as like their 1968 album. This was their 1969 album, and it was recorded on the road. They had 3 concert tours in the US and I believe 4 in the UK. So they were busy throughout the entire year of 1969, and yet they still managed, in between their concert dates, they would book studio time, go in there, record a song, and then be off and do a couple more concerts. So the pace that they were working at and still being able to put out a remarkable album like this is really mind-blowing to me. But it is definitely one of their best albums, probably their heaviest album. You only got really one ballad on here, which is Thank You. And you've got some moments where they're balancing the light with the heavy, like on Ramble On. They do that so effectively on What Is and What Should Never Be, where you've got the soft and the heavy. And people think, oh, Nirvana invented that. If you were a child of the 90s, you might have thought that was just so revolutionary or so cool that they did that. Led Zeppelin was doing that from their very first album. So Led Zeppelin would go on to influence countless bands, artists, musical styles that would evolve over the subsequent decades. And I don't need to tell you that, because if you're watching the video, you already know how awesome Led Zeppelin is. But this record, I do like it better than the first, I will tell you that. And yeah, it is heavier. And this really kind of established their heavy guitar, blues sound. I mean, you had some of that on the first album, but this was full on like the genesis of heavy metal. And maybe there had been some bands that had done heavy before Led Zeppelin, but I don't think any of those albums had reached popularity like this one did. The album went to #1, as heavy as this album is. And you've got so many fantastic tracks. So many of these songs were played on the radio. I think the only songs off this album that I've never heard played on the radio would probably be Lemon Song and Bring It On Home. I think for most of them, even Moby Dick, I've heard that played on the radio. So it just shows how solid this record is. So anyway, let's get into the songs on this album. And I'm not going to break it down like I usually do. Sometimes I have people watching these videos who've never heard the album. If I'm doing a particular artist catalog, and they have a very deep catalog, they've got a lot of studio albums, and some of them maybe just are less popular than others, particularly the newer ones. But with Led Zeppelin, everybody has heard this album, so I'm not going to describe each song for you because you already have heard them. You already know what these songs sound like, so I'm just going to give you my impressions on each particular song. So it opens up with Whole Lotta Love, and holy smokes, has there ever been a heavier, more in your face, incredible, balls to the wall album opener than Whole Lotta Love? It defines the Led Zeppelin sound. I love the middle part where you've just kind of got John Bonham doing the hi-hat and all those weird kind of acid rock psychedelic effects. And it's almost like, I kind of compare that to being on a roller coaster, and that middle section is where you're kind of going up there. You're climbing up that hill. Another favorite moment of mine is you've got the opening riff from Jimmy Page, and then John Paul Jones. When that bass kicks in, it starts out heavier than hell, but when John Paul Jones's bass kicks in, it's like, holy shit. Listen to that on a great stereo, and it will send chills up your spine. It is that powerful of an opener. What is and what should never be, I love a lot. I love that lazy, breezy guitar strumming in the verses, and then the very heavy chorus anchored by John Bonham's drumming.
And if I say to you tomorrow, take my hand, child, come with me. It's to a castle I will take you, where what's to be, they say, will be. I guess the wind says spin, sail away, leave the day way up high in the sky. And it won't, but the wind won't blow. We really shouldn't go, it only goes to show that you will be mad by taking that style. If you say to me tomorrow, oh, what fun it all would be
what's to stop us, pretty baby? But what is and what should never be? I catch the wind, see it's been sailed away, leave the day way up high in the sky. And oh, the wind won't blow, really shouldn't go, only goes to show that you will be mad by taking our time.
And I like too how the guitar solo, it plays through the verse and it plays through the chorus. So you get Jimmy Page doing a light guitar solo during the melody that would be for the verses, and then he plays a much heavier guitar solo during the chorus section. And this was a song that was written, I think, primarily by Robert Plant. He wrote the lyrics, and I think he probably, I guess, wrote the melody as well. The third song is a cover of Howlin' Wolf's Killin' Floor. Although it's titled The Lemon Song. You know, Led Zeppelin certainly was guilty of repurposing blues riffs, blues lyrics, blues songs for their own compositions, but I don't care. I just love the way that it sounds. The Lemon Song is very cool. It's not my favorite blues song by Led Zeppelin, but I think in the context of side one, it just works perfectly. I love the riff. I love Plant's vocals. Everything about it is fantastic. And then the interesting thing, so like I had said during my Led Zeppelin 1 episode, I first discovered Led Zeppelin on cassette. And on the cassette version, side one does not end with thank you. It ends with Heartbreaker. So when I got the vinyl and actually got the CD, to be fair, I got the CD before I got the vinyl, I was like, just really kind of puzzled by the song, the track sequencing and why they had done that. And on a lot of artist cassettes, they were monkeying with the track listing for continuity. They wanted each side to be the same length. So I was always really kind of startled when it was like, no, Heartbreaker right into Livin' Lovin' Maid. So anyway, but at the end of side one on the vinyl, the way that it was meant to be heard, Thank You closes out side one. This was another Robert Plant composition that he wrote for his wife, Maureen. One of the most tender Led Zeppelin ballads.
If the sun refused to shine, I would still be loving you. When mountains crumble to the sea, still be you and me. Kind of woman, I give you my all. Kind of woman, nothing more.
One of the most gorgeous things that Led Zeppelin ever wrote. And flip it over to side two, and the tear your head off riff of Heartbreaker. And I love how Jimmy Page just stops the song and breaks into that solo. He's just shredding on the guitar. Then they break into that boogie rock section before Jimmy Page goes into another guitar solo. It stops again, and then we're back into the original motif, whatever you want to call it, for the song. I love the different sections, and it really is a song for Jimmy Page to show off his guitar skills. Then it tears right into Livin', Lovin', Made, and Led Zeppelin has gone on record saying they've never been a fan of this song. They consider it to be filler. I happen to like it a lot. I don't think they've ever played it live, but I love this song. It used to be on the radio all the time. I don't know why they don't like it. It was apparently written about a groupie, but I don't care what's not to like about this particular song. It does not sound like filler at all. It's better than 90% of the songs that you hear on classic rock radio today. So I don't know. You may disagree with me in the comment section and say, yeah, it is filler, or you hate it, but I don't get it. I love that song. Then we have another song that starts out kind of like a folky ballad, ramble on, and then that gets heavy in the choruses. I've always liked Ramble On. I really do. And my favorite part is the John Paul Jones bass line, which I want to isolate for you here just to appreciate on its own. Ladies and gentlemen, I present John Paul Jones. So yeah, the bass does it for me. It's entirely the bass for Ramble On. And yeah, I like the trippy guitar solo. I do like Robert Plant's vocal, how he's able to navigate kind of the crooning style and then into the shouting chorus. Great song. Moby Dick, yeah, let's let John Bonham have front and center. Let him have the spotlight for a minute on this album. I'm generally not a fan of long drum solos, but if it's John Bonham, I'll listen to him bang on the drums all day. John Bonham is a drum god. And yeah, I like the fact that there's that little riff, that musical intro before he gets into the drumming, and then it closes out, it kind of bookends. So yeah, Moby Dick, I think, is a spectacular song. I like it. I don't think it's self-indulgent. I think it's perfect in the context of this album. And then it closes out like we close out Led Zeppelin 1 with Bring It On Home to Me. Fantastic. Bring It On Home's great. It's everything you want in a Led Zeppelin song. And they used to tear into these blues songs like nobody's business. Nobody covered a blues song like Led Zeppelin did. So yeah, great way to close out the album. Fantastic album. I can't believe an album this spectacular is not even my favorite, but it's so hard to rank Led Zeppelin's catalog just because they are such a great band. They never put out a bad album. To my money, they never had a bad song for that matter. I mean, there are certain songs that I like less than others, but the vinyl version I have is the repress, which was remastered, I don't know how many years ago this was. I had an original copy, but I VCLT'd it to somebody who didn't own the album. Have a couple of cassette versions. I don't know what any of these date from. I tend to think this is probably a 70s version of the cassette. This is, I don't know, probably like an 80s version. And this is only slightly different because the tracks are listed here vertically instead of on this one, they're listed horizontally, but on the back of this one, they're listed vertically. Otherwise, the cassette looks the same. I've got 3 CD versions here. This is the original CD issue. This was the remastered version that came out in the 90s, I believe. And then this is the 2-disc version. I love how they have almost like a photo negative version of the cover on these. And this has a bonus disc. I think it's got some alternate takes or early versions of the album. can we just acknowledge Led Zeppelin II is one of the greatest rock albums of all time? And I know you agree with me, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. So anyway, thanks for hanging in there with me. I'm sorry, these videos, it's going to take me some time. And honestly, because there's not a lot of video material out there on the early days for Led Zeppelin, and what little there is will get your video blocked if you throw it on. So it's been a bit more of a challenge. It's more challenging than I thought it would be. I thought I'd get to use more video of Led Zeppelin, but everything is copyrighted. Everything gets blocked. So I'm trying to do my best, trying to be creative with these. But thanks for hanging in there with me, and take care.